The Connors shouldn't exist. And yeah, I mean, that sounds a little dramatic, but I'm serious because this show just wrapped up in 2025 with its final season. And every time I think about it, I can't help feeling like we were absolutely robbed. Like somehow we ended up in this alternate timeline because the timeline we were supposed to be in was another 5 seasons of Roseanne. And back in 2018, the revival dropped and it was phenomenal. It had massive ratings, people were hyped. The writing was phenomenal as well. The cast still had the chemistry that they always had. It genuinely felt like the show let us peek into the life of this family just 10-15 years later, however long it was, just seeing where life had ended up taking them, and people loved it. The premiere ended up pulling around 18 million viewers with delayed viewing, which made it one of the biggest network premieres in years. And it actually felt like Roseanne was back, and then just like that, it was gone. The show was canceled, and whether you agree with that decision or not, ultimately that's not really the point of this video, because what happened next is the part that just doesn't make sense to me. If you're gonna cancel Roseanne, then end the show. But that's not what they did. Instead, they removed Roseanne, killed off her character, took her show, changed the name, and kept it going. And every time I think about that, I just end up asking the same question of how does something like this even happen? To understand why this is so frustrating, you have to remember that the original show left off horrendously. The final season of Roseanne was awful. One of the weirdest and worst seasons in television history, honestly, and the finale was even worse. This family ends up going from poor to rich by hitting the lottery, and episode to episode the stories become more and more surreal. And then in the finale, they pull the rug and reveal that Dan actually died of a heart attack years earlier at that wedding, and the entire season was basically Roseanne writing a fictional version of these events that were happening. I mean, it was bizarre, just strange. And when the revival came back in 2018, they basically retconned all of that. Dan was alive again, the lottery storyline was gone, and suddenly the show was kind of back to normal. A working class family just dealing with real life, and of course everybody's just a little bit older now. And Roseanne was still the center of everything, of course. I mean, it is her show. Then she made a very interesting tweet, and ABC decided to cancel the show. And just a few weeks later, they announced that the continuation, The Connors, would be coming out, and the only difference was that Roseanne would not be in it. And in the premiere episode, they revealed that she died from an opiate overdose that they had actually been kind of setting up in the revival season, where she was struggling with her pain medication.
The autopsy found that it wasn't a heart attack. Roseanne OD'd on opioids.
And, honestly, if you're going to remove her character, I thought that was a smart way to do it. I think they handled it well. Obviously, it was still weird. How many shows kill off their main character and then just keep it going? I mean, this type of thing just does not happen. And this started to feel less like a cancellation and more like a corporate pivot. ABC, as well as the rest of the cast, saw how successful this revival was going, and they weren't about to walk away from it. But the problem is that it's Roseanne's show. She is the center of the show. Her comedy, her timing, her personality is the series, Without that, the show had to redistribute that energy and those roles across the rest of the cast. And the characters who really ended up stepping into those lead roles were Dan and Darlene. And, credit to John Goodman and Sarah Gilbert. I think they do a good job of portraying those characters. And John Goodman has to end up playing this kind of older, sadder version of Dan. And this character is just trying to hold his life together after losing the person that he spent decades with. And again, I thought he did a great job with that, but ultimately Dan was never meant to be the engine of the show. He was that kind of balance to Roseanne, and their chemistry was the heartbeat of the entire series, at least in my opinion. And when you remove that dynamic, the tone of this show changes dramatically, and Darlene steps into more of that center, which makes sense because her personality is probably the closest to Roseanne's. But even then, it's still weird, and the differences become extremely noticeable with certain characters like Jackie. Laurie Metcalf plays the iconic Jackie, and Jackie used to be one of the most layered characters in sitcom history, in my opinion. I mean, we see this character struggle with many relationships between her sister, between her mother, between her boyfriend, that she goes through abusive relationships. I mean, she even has a child with Fred and has to figure out how to co-parent with him while navigating the messy breakup that they're going through. And mainly her son Andy was a huge part of her character development, but in the revival, Andy doesn't exist. They completely erased him, and that is just an egregious retcon in my opinion, because Andy wasn't just like this minor part of the show. He was a major part of Jackie's growth and development, and without that part of her life, Jackie starts to feel like this weird, exaggerated cartoon version of herself, and it just sucks. Like the way they rewrote her character is awful in my opinion, and I would say they just completely ruined her character. But to be fair, I think Jackie's really the only character that they just completely screwed up. I think they did a good job with Becky's character, because in the original series she was always supposed to be the kid that kind of got out of Lanford. She had all the potential in the world, but life just didn't turn out that way for her. Her husband Mark, played by Glenn Quinn in the original show, had sadly passed away years earlier, and they decided to incorporate that into her storyline. So when you see Becky again, she's basically a 40-year-old woman trying to rebuild her life. You know, she's broke, she's back in Lanford, and she's an alcoholic, you know, and you can feel the existential crisis that she is constantly having. And honestly, it's good writing. I think it was very intriguing and interesting, and I thought the way they did that was very grounded in reality. I mean, this is most people. I think 99% of people have to go through the realization that they are just an average Joe or the everyday person, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think the problem is that we set up expectations. Being just a regular person is something that's looked down upon. I think they did a nice job of having Becky come to terms with that, and she's, you know, able to eventually be happy with herself. And eventually she even ends up getting pregnant after a one-night stand and has a daughter that's appropriately named Beverly Rose, after her grandmother and mom. And you know, I really like that. And overall, the Connors wasn't a failure by any means. Over 100 episodes, I mean, that's a solid run. Clearly there was still demand in the audience that wanted to see this. The show just quietly became something different though, and instead of a personality driven sitcom built around one central voice, it became more of a traditional ensemble cast type of show. And you know, that's fine and all, but it's just not the same thing. And that's the part that just really haunts me, because when I go back and watch the revival season of Roseanne, the show didn't feel stale at all. It felt like it was the start of something completely new, and the show had just found its footing again. Like we were about to get another legendary run of Roseanne, watching these characters get older, seeing where the Connor family goes next, and instead it just got ripped away from us after 10 episodes. And every time I rewatch those episodes, I just can't help but thinking about the seasons we should have gotten, the stories we never got to see, the era of a show that never got the chance to even exist. Because for a moment there, it felt like Roseanne was back. And the more I think about it, the more I just feel like we were robbed.
You know, it makes me angry, or sad is more it, that the work of an artist over 30 years, they think that we just pull that out of their ass and that they can copy it, you know. All the stuff I suffered in my life I put into that show. That show is about my family, my children.
Was there any path where they could allow you to apologize or do something?
I said, let me go on all your ABC shows and explain my tweet and how it was a political and not a racial tweet. And, you know, that was denied me. And, you know, I should have stayed off Twitter. I did it to myself. And, you know, I made a mistake. And the ball kept rolling.